Today, we will be finishing this area in the city. It has a 64 by 48 stud area. My plan is to add 2 modular buildings in front and a custom 64 by 16 modular building behind them. However, as you will see later in this video, plans changed. To start with, I built the mills sections for the official LEGO modular sets. The first modular we will add is the 2010 Grand Emporium. If you set a base plate on top of open studs, the combination of the height of the studs, the LEGO logo on the studs, and the base plates will equal the height of one regular plate. This special 1x1 plate will be used to hold the base plates in place. The other modular we will add is the 2011 Pet Shop. After the modulars were added to the mills section, I put them in the city. There was a lot of extra details along the sidewalk which I had to remove since it would make it seem too crowded, and we will be adding our own custom details to the entire city in a later video. Once that was done, I used Technic pegs to attach the modular buildings to each other and the rest of the city. The last thing to do before starting to build the custom modular was to lay gray tiles along the side of the Grand Emporium. As with any build, the first step was to create the base. My plan for the building was to build it in 2 sections, a right and a left section, which would each have a 16 by 32 stud area. They would then snap together to create a modular twice as long as the standard official LEGO modular sets. Then I began building the general design for the first floor. The color palette I decided on was dark gray and black with blue tinted glass. I have found that light and dark gray colors look good to use for the base floor in the past, and they don't distract from the upper levels and can also easily work with most other colors. This building is actually based off of a reference building I found a picture of online. Unfortunately, I did not save the image at the time and cannot find it anywhere, but the first floor uses these arches over windows. Since I do not have dark gray arches that would work with this window distance, I've resorted to using inverted slopes at different angles to give a rough idea of an arch. As I finished this first floor, I realized that the building would probably be better suited for the front of the city, so I rearranged the modular's location to the back. This meant that I had to remove the light gray tiles that had been on the curb for the modulars, and I finished tiling off this area of the sidewalk so that the modular buildings would look properly integrated into the city. The change also meant that I had to redo the orientation of the custom building. Luckily, I decided to change it then instead of later, as that would have been a lot more work. With the general design complete, I started working on the little details of the first floor that would really make it come to life. The first thing I added was an awning, which I had been inspired to do from the reference image. The main reason I was so excited to do this is because it would help give the building a ton of extra depth. At this point, all the depth it really had was the windows being moved one stud back from the face of the building, and I knew these awnings would make it look much more 3D. Then I layered plates along the top of the windows and walls since I had finalized the height of the windows after adding the basic awnings. However, these awnings still felt a little bland, so I looked back at the reference image and I realized that they had the classic pole reaching down to the edge of the awnings. With adding this, I also introduced a new angle on the building, which gave it an extra layer of depth I could not have added with just different offsets of basic bricks. One last part of the basic building I had to do was finish the other walls around the building, which was easy enough. I did not have to worry about detailing these as they would be hidden behind other modular buildings. Now that I knew the final outline of the first floor, I added a layer of plates below it. I have seen this done in a lot of modular buildings, and it helps layer the building better when adding tiles, so it does not look like the building is sinking into the ground. Once that was done, I finished the top of the first floor exterior. This was done by adding tiles to the sides and top of 2x2 studs not on top plates. Because there was no connection between the front and back walls on one side of both of the first floor sections, I added what was essentially a support beam to hold the walls in place. With that done, I also finished placing the last layer of bricks along the back wall. I had left the door frames for the building open in the hopes that I would find some glass doors in our collection while building it, but since I did not, I temporarily added glass panes to where the doors would eventually go. To complete the first floor, I added light gray tiles around the front of the building. On the right side, I had to use dark gray tiles instead to match the tiles that it would line up with in the city. Then I thought I was done. However, while I was building the second floor, I found 2 16 by 16 gray plates, so I replaced the green and yellow plates that were on the first floor base. And with that done, the first floor was finally finished, and I got to start designing the part of the building I had been most excited about. Of course, the first step of the next level was to build the floors. Something interesting about this floor is that the number of studs along its width are odd. This makes designing the floor a bit harder. The reason I added a notch to this plate is because the windows from the last floor extend up through the second floor, which means that this part of the second floor will look almost like it was carved out when I finish it. To start the building off, I placed a layer of plates to get an outline of the walls, similar to how I did the first floor. Where there are light gray plates, there will be walls, and where there are dark gray plates, I will add windows. It helps create more detail and also reflects how the real-world reference for this building was designed. The jumper tiles were used to offset the windows and to add a little bit more texture. Especially with a building with this style, I think it's important to try to find as many ways to add more depth onto it. On top of the windows, I added more jumper tiles so that the next layer of plates will be recentered. As you can see here, plates being placed on top of the jumper tiles, which are placed half a stud off the normal building plane, can end up becoming realigned with the normal building plane and can connect to the walls. I completed this tiling along the entire front wall. Then I added a back wall. As I said before, I did not worry too much about the color or detail on it, as it will be covered by the modular buildings next to it. The last step was to just connect the front and back wall with a beam, very similar to how I did the first floor. For the second level on the right, I built the level on top of the first floor. This is because I had to design around the extruded glass section, since as I mentioned earlier, it was a different height than the rest of the first floor. After finishing both sections, I did one of the periodic checks to make sure that the sides connected properly. Though I did not find any structure problems, I did notice that there was a major gap where the left side connected with the right side on the second floor. To remove this gap, I simply built a part of the wall entirely on the right section of the building. This fixed the problem pretty easily. For the third story floor, I continued the pattern of light gray and dark gray plates that I had started on the second story. However, I had a problem getting the light gray 2x2 plate for the corner as all around it was dark gray plates, so I could not connect it from underneath the floor. This meant that for the first time in the model, I would have to add support for the floor on the space of the floor where I would later be adding interior details. Not the most convenient, but it's not that bad. Besides the specialized floor, everything was the same as the second level except that I added an extra layer of orange masonry bricks over the entire top outside wall. This helped cap off the building and gave it a little difference from the previous floor. You may also have noticed that I used other orange bricks besides masonry bricks. This is because we were running low on masonry bricks, so I took some from the second level and replaced them with these other 1x2 orange bricks. I'm actually kind of a fan of how it created a bit of variation in the standard pattern. Just like the right section, for the third floor left section, I basically just copied the previous floor, but added again the extra layer of masonry bricks around the top to make it look a little different and to show that it was the last floor. While I was building, I realized that the beam I had added to the previous floor could also be used to support the third floor, in addition to holding up the walls. All I had to do was move it up one plate, so I did this for all 4 upper floor sections. Once I finished the third floor, I connected both sides to make sure everything lined up correctly. Then it was time to start working on the roof. I used light gray plates along the outside of the floor to match the color of the railing I would build later on. For the actual design of the roof, I wanted to do a similar style to the balcony I had done in our previous custom LEGO City building. Before I could add the furniture though, I placed a line of railings along the back of the building. Then I added the furniture. I kept the color palette simple to reflect the modern style of the building. My favorite part of the roof is this pergola, as it adds extra height and detail to the build. Once it and these flower beds were added, I built this simple modern railing around the front. After I made a small adjustment to the top of level 3, I finished the top of the glass section of the building, which had flowed through all 3 previous levels and was a statement design of the reference building I was inspired from. It also served as an access point for the roof. I think once I put an interior into the building, this glass section will be where the stairs are located. With the final structural component completed, I basically used the same design I had done on the left roof. The only change was that I made a dining space instead of couches under the pergola. With the layout complete, I designed the tile pattern for the floor. I have seen this pattern used on other buildings, and I like the design. Basically, it's made of staggered 2x2 dark tan tiles, and anywhere with furniture has a wood floor tile design with a gray border on the sides. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. Let us know in the comments what you think. Now that the custom modular was complete, I added it to the city using the standard Technic pegs to connect it to the other mills sections. If there's one thing I've learned from building a city with large and possibly breakable structures, it's to move them in sections. So I started with connecting the first floor in the city and then added the other floors in a separate strip. As you can see, the back walls are hidden behind the Grand Emporium and Pet Store, so I did not need to worry about making them the right exterior color or detailing them either. This is a good area to save money on if you are building a modular building and you do not have enough of a specific brick color. Overall, I think the building fits very well with the buildings and other landscapes already in the city. It has the same proportions and detail level as the Space Center and the Tech Hub. At this point, there's nothing I'd like to change about it, and actually it makes me realize that the Tech Hub is kind of lacking in colors. I'd just like to end with thanking you all for your support. I know we upload our videos pretty randomly and spontaneously, but I hope you enjoyed. This is Brick Design Workshop, and we'll see you in the next video.